yes. Hi, Robin. Good to see you. And
I
Shadi, hi.
Hi guys, I just put a link in the chat if you want to click it and open up a second tab or window, you are welcome to. We're doing a Pear Deck activity, but you don't have to do it on Pear Deck. But if you want, you can.
Okay, I'm going to get us started. Do you want to?
Yep.
Hello, everybody who's able to join us here tonight. We're also recording this session, so if you are already in your pajamas and that sounds wonderful on this dark evening, you're welcome to keep your cameras off. But our Parent Academy nights are intended to have parents experience what learning is like for students, and tonight's event is directed towards math, which for many of our students, especially our sixth grade students, is the hardest subject because they have gone from a teacher who's teaching a lot of subjects to a teacher who's dedicated to math instruction. And where kids might have felt like before they were really great at math and they experience struggle now, which is how we set it up. It can feel very overwhelming. And that's what tonight is about, is why we want to challenge students and how we are supporting them and how you can come alongside that. And tonight, all I'm doing is introducing our amazing math teachers. And our teachers are so amazing. Not only is it strange that they both studied psychology in school and math, it's also, no, some people have. It's also really, really nice that they have the experience of being parents of students in Long Beach Unified. And then also right now, Gabi Schmidt is a parent of a current student, so we get all the perspective and context. But I really do want to say that these are very thoughtful and very caring teachers who bring sort of like a visual and inquiry-based learning to math that makes it more fun than I ever got to experience, and I loved math in school. So I'm glad that you're here tonight, and I hope we can learn together, and I will hand it over to Carrie and Gabi.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. We are going to go ahead and get started. I'm Carrie Noble. I teach 2 blocks of Math 6 and 3 blocks of 8th grade algebra.
And I'm Gabi Schmidt. So glad you guys are here. I teach the other 6th grade math, and then I teach all of the 7th grade math. And I do have a 6th grader who has Miss Noble and an 8th grader who has Miss Noble. I've escaped having my own kids yet, but we'll see.
It's coming. Okay, so we're going to start with an opening question in the chat. Oh, it's going back and forth. Okay, there we go. Oh, I'm not doing that. It's possessed. I don't know what's happening. Can you put in something in the chat? What do you remember about middle school math? So just some memory you have about middle school math. You can just put it in the chat. It can be anything. A feeling, a formula, an activity you did. Pre-algebra. You can't pick apart a binomial. My table mates and I competed to finish questions first. So fast. Speed, yes. Being in math club, even though I didn't think I was good in math. Really, Miss Schmidt got a detention for chewing gum in math class. Middle school is when I really started to enjoy math. Fibonacci sequence is a bonus question. Really, really fun. It is when the math gets really fun. I feel like a lot of elementary school math is very computational, and then middle school math gets a lot more theoretical, which makes it more fun, but also makes it challenging for kids that really like doing computation. Too many worksheets. Yeah, I remember a lot of algebra problem solving for X. Oh, your teacher was exciting. So we have exciting teachers, make it inspiring, and that's when you fell in love with math. That's beautiful. Dorothy doesn't remember anything. Oh, afraid of my math teacher. Grew up in Ethiopia. Oh, strict math teachers. Yes, famous for being strict, the math teachers. So thank you so much for sharing, guys. It makes me feel like we're talking to real people. I feel like I'm teaching on Zoom again, and I'm a little traumatized. So it's nice to have you guys responding so warmly and welcoming. So in math, we have these Common Core standards that have like all the math content standards, but we also have these 8 mathematical practices. And when we do the problem of the week, which actually takes us a month, we're really trying to dig into these mathematical practices and ask students to behave and think as mathematicians do out there in the world. Ms. Schmidt, do you want to add anything about?
Sure. Yeah. Do we want to talk through these?
I don't know if we need to talk each of them individually, but
yeah. But it's really the way that we tackle kind of the bigger problems of mathematics, not just, like Carrie said, like a computational type thing, but how we look for patterns and reason, and how we persevere through really hard and challenging problems and look for patterns and things like that. So that's why we're talking a lot tonight about the problems of the week, these bigger problems that really push us to use more of these types of thinking skills, not just understanding a particular concept.
Yeah, and being able to back up your claim with evidence and support. That's a huge part of being a mathematician, is being able to show that your argument is valid and support it with evidence. So they'll do a lot of that when they get to high school and beyond, when they write proofs and things. Okay, so just to get you in the spirit of, oh, there it goes again. Just to get you in the spirit of, thinking like a mathematician, we're going to listen to a short 3-minute NPR story on the Millennium Problems, which are the kinds of problems that mathematicians really do kind of think about. And the POWs are kind of like a smaller middle school version of those types of problems. So just 3 minutes. Here we go. Can you guys hear okay?
Grigori Perelman is one of the world's finest mathematical minds. In 2003, he solved the Poincaré conjecture, which deals with shapes that exist in 4 or more dimensions. A solution had evaded mathematicians for a century. The Poincaré conjecture is one of the 7 Millennium Prize problems, and solving any of what you might call the 7 wonders of the math world brings a $1 million award. Subtracting Perelman's win, that leaves 6 more to be solved. And to talk about those, Keith Devlin, NPR's Weekend Edition math guy, joined us. Good morning.
Good morning, Renee.
Give us a simple version of what the remaining Millennium Prize problems are. I mean, if you can put it in a tweet.
There aren't enough characters in a typical tweet to be able to do it. There are 6 of them, as you mentioned, Renee. One is about how well computers can solve certain kind of problems. One is about what pattern do the prime numbers have? How much can you know about a pattern of the primes? One is about the fundamental nature of matter, the things that we and everything around us are made of. One is an old 19th century problem about can you solve the equations that describe how water flows along a pipe? And then there's another one connected with prime numbers and the structure of the whole numbers. So they're in all different areas of mathematics, physics, computational mathematics, and patterns of prime numbers.
Well, let me ask you. I mean, most of these sound beyond me and probably most people. But let's say the mathematicians going at it are looking for something, and one would maybe be the thrill or the prestige of solving them. But what would the larger benefits be?
Oh boy, in these different problems, one of the other problems is a thing called the P versus NP problem. If that was solved in one direction, it would mean internet commerce and internet cybersecurity would collapse in an instant. That much is at stake. We think the answer is going to go the other way, but if someone comes along and solves one of these millennium problems about computation and it goes in the way we don't expect, then it will tell us that everything we assume about the security of communications over the internet is false.
Have computers helped in any of this?
Computers have affected mathematics around the edges, but these are problems that mathematicians have to sit down, paper and pencil, close their eyes, think and dream and talk to each other from time to time. and try to solve them in exactly the way that Grigory Perelman recently solved the Poincare conjecture. And all of the other millennium problems are really of that nature.
That's a lovely thought, except now that it's sort of out in the world, unleashed, as it were. One, he doesn't want to collect his big prizes. He doesn't want to collect the money attached to it because he doesn't want the publicity, right?
I mean, he's really the mathematical equivalent of J.D. Salinger. You know, he writes Catcher in the Rye and then disappears from view. The unfortunate thing is he has now solved one of the biggest unsolved problems in mathematics. And there's going to be a ceremony in Paris this June. Most of my colleagues that know something about Perelman have believed that he's not going to turn up for that. Whether he will arrange to receive the $1 million prize quietly out of the limelight, I think we'd all be very surprised if he publicly turned up to receive a check and had photographs of him receiving a check, you know, one of these big checks like a lottery winner. Everything I know about him suggests he's not going to go that route.
Keith Devlin is author of The Millennium Problems, the 7 greatest unsolved mathematical puzzles of our time. And you might know him also as the math guy on NPR's Weekend Edition. Thanks very much.
Okay, my pleasure, Renee.
Okay, so that was just a little like inspiring, perhaps that like mathematicians do these big problems that they don't have answers to. And we just want to give kids a little taste of what it feels like to struggle through a big problem. So we do these POWs. This picture up here is actually a problem that was just solved about tiling the plane with I think it's pentagons that they talk about in 7th grade. So just a little taste of that. What we have students do is we give them a problem, like a meteor problem that might take them a little longer to figure out. And we ask them to do a 5-section write-up. Do you want to just trade off, Ms. Schmidt? I'll talk about the problem statement. Okay, so the problem statement is where we ask kids to just write the problem again in their own words. And this kind of uncovers some misconceptions that they might have about the problem as we read through it. So for example, this blind bat problem, how many of you guys have seen or heard your kids talk about the blind bat problem that they're working on in 6th grade? Some of you are saying no. I see the Lacus family saying no, that's because she probably already did it and turned it in. But like some other people are like, yes, we've seen this before. Okay, so in this problem, there's lots of clues. Like there's 2 bats that can see out of their right eye, and there's 3 bats that can't see out of their left eye, or I don't know what the clues are exactly, but they have to piece them together. And when they write the problem statement, some of them will say there are 2 bats that can only see out of their right eye, and that lets me know that they've misread the problem, that they think that we know that they must then be blind in the other eye and can only see out of the other. And I get to like see that in their writing and say, wait a minute, go back and read it again. That's not exactly what it said. We have to be precise, and we have to make sure what we're writing down matches. So that's why we have them write the problem again in their own words, so that we can make sure they're actually understanding what's being asked.
Sorry. The second section is the process section. And this is really the meat of the problem of the week, or the POW. This is where they're going to write the most. And they just are supposed to walk us through their whole thinking process as they're solving the problem. So just like these millennium problems that take maybe thousands of years to solve, these are the types of problems that typically cannot just be solved sitting down and thinking about it for 5 minutes. So in their process, we want to hear the things that they tried that didn't work. We want to try and hear what they, what kind of sparked a new idea, or what they did when they get stuck, all those kind of things. So this is where they're kind of walking us through where they started, their failures, their new attempts, what kind of pushed their thinking, and walk us through, how they actually got to their solution.
And then the next section is the solution. And that's where they write like a really concise, like, this was the conclusion that I got to after all of this messy work that I showed up here. This is my final conclusion. Here's why I know it's correct. And then if they can, they generalize that solution to any situation. Not all POWs have that capability, but sometimes, like the one we're going to show you as a sample later, there is a way to say like, okay, this is how it works in this specific example with this number, but here's how it could work with any number. So that's where they can talk about that a bit in the solution section.
And then the extension is where they're kind of pushing the problem even farther. So they're coming up with a new context for the problem, or looking for a general, like a general problem to it, or just like something, a new question that they create that is similar to or based on the problem that they've just solved.
And that's based on, like, in the field of mathematics, like a lot of times mathematicians are working on something and then something else like comes to the surface while they're working, and they kind of go like, oh, I need to work on that later. That might take it in an interesting direction. So that's where that extension came from. And then the last section is the self-reflection. And that's where students can talk about what virtues they had to practice, what virtues they could practice more of next time. Kids talk about tenacity a lot, or maybe they need to practice autonomy and trust themselves and not ask for help too quickly, or, you know, they can reflect on what the process was like for them and think about those virtues. Does anybody have any questions about those 5 sections? Can we clarify any of that? Upon hearing no questions, I will go on. Feel free to put any questions in the chat as we go. This next bit is just a little bit of a public service announcement about growth mindset versus fixed mindset. I am sure you guys have heard these catchphrases. Growth mindset is the idea that you are capable of getting better at things if you try and work at them, versus fixed mindset, which is I'm either good or not, I'm born with it, or or I'm not. And unfortunately, math is one of those subjects that a lot of people get a real fixed mindset about. And they feel like, some people are just born being good at math, and some people are just naturally good at math, and some people are not. And they kind of put themselves into boxes. And we're imploring you to please remember this language when you're talking about even your own mathematical thinking, because it does trickle down. So like if your kids hear you say like, oh, I'm just not a math person, go ask, your other parent or something like that. The message that gets internalized sometimes is like, you can be either a math person or not a math person. And we kind of want to push against that and say that we can all get better at math with effort and hard work. Ms. Schmidt, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, and just if you are one of those people who has like math trauma memories, it is a great way to kind of be with your student in that, especially on these POWs. Like sit down with them and solve and struggle with them. Like that's such a good model for them to see you as someone who also doesn't know how to do it, and then together you look at all your different ideas and how could we start and what do we know, and asking all the kinds of questions to try and do that with them. So yeah, I think sharing if math is a struggle for you, then sharing that, but also kind of entering into that with them and helping them push through is great.
Yeah, and I think in middle school, and I think this is a struggle in 6th grade especially, is a lot of kids get the idea that they are good at math in elementary school, and they label themselves that way, and it feels like a positive label. But then when they hit a challenge in 6th grade, they like it, because they have that message that in order to be good at math, you have to understand it quickly and easily. Then when they hit a struggle, they decide they're no longer good at math, and they just flip to the other side. And we want to just remind them, like, people who are good at math do struggle with math as well. Like that's part of being good at math, is having tenacity and working through difficult things. Okay, so this is an example of a POW that the kids are going to get, I think, between Thanksgiving and winter break. It's called the checkerboard POW. It is about this checkerboard. And the question is essentially, how many squares are on the checkerboard? So what do you guys think? You can put it in the chat or say it out loud. What do you think students' very first answer is to this question? They look at this, we hand this out. What do you think they say immediately? I'll give you a hint if it's hard to count. There are 8 squares in both directions. Yeah. Yes, Absolutely. No, it's okay, Shadi. You're right. You thought it was a 10 by 10. So that makes sense. Yes, absolutely. Kids are like, sweet, 64, I'm done. And they just want to turn it in. And we say, try again, right? So I think we have another slide here. Oh, yes. Where maybe, and this is one of those things that's much easier to do in person, but can anybody share with me how there might be more than 64? You can unmute and speak. I think we're a small enough group that we can do that, or you can put stuff in the chat. I'm happy to annotate. Oops.
So there are the 2x2s are still squares, and 3x3s are squares, and 4x4s are squares, and there are all of those are on the board as well.
All right, all right. Oh, I'm not seeing where to annotate. It's been a while since we've done this Zoom teaching. Ms. Bryant, do you have annotation? Or maybe Ms. Schmidt, you can figure out how to annotate. Yeah, well, so I'll let them figure that out. Absolutely. So I think that was Wyatt speaking, if I'm not mistaken. We've got different size squares here. So sometimes like the first question we might ask students is like, well, are all the squares 1 by 1? Are there bigger squares that you can look at? So definitely, we're still working on that annotation. We can't seem to get it. I don't remember how to do it. Oh, now we've got live transcript. Okay, but yes, so can everybody see that there are 2 by 2 squares? So let me ask you this question. How many 2 by 2 squares do you see in the top row? Okay, I see Robin saying 4. Yes? Okay. Does everybody see the 4 that Robin is referring to? I'm sorry, I'm doing this without any pointing. Okay. Does anybody see more than 4? Okay, Wyatt and Megan see 7. I'm wondering, Robin, if that pushes your thinking a little bit. How come they're seeing 7? Which ones are you seeing? Like, which ones do you think they're seeing that you're not seeing? I see you nodding, so you might be. Do you think, what would be a key word that would help Robin get from 4 to 7? Like
Overlap.
If you were the teachers. Overlapping.
Overlap.
Hi, Davis. Absolutely. It would be overlapping, right? So like maybe that's the next hint, right? Overlapping. How many are going down? How many 2 by 2s are going down? Down a column. Or maybe you've already gone that far. How many 2 by 2s do you think are on the whole board? Yeah, same across the top. Wyatt saying 49. Wyatt, do you want to say something about that 49? Ooh, like a pattern, Miss Bryant. 7 squared. Okay, so Wyatt is saying 7 squared. So there's like 7 going down, 7 going across. Okay, so Miss Bryant is suggesting maybe there's going to be a pattern. Do you think there's other squares besides 1 by 1s and 2 by 2s? This is exactly what it was like last year teaching online, you guys. Can we go a little bigger? Yes, Becky's saying 3 by 3s, 4 by 4s. What's the biggest one we can get to? I'm seeing Wyatt, I'm seeing Miss Bryant holding fingers up. Yeah, 8 by 8, there's one big square, right? And that's actually typically what kids' second guess is when they come back and say 64 and we're like, keep looking. They go, oh, 65. Because there's 64 tiny ones and then one big one. Like, and they don't want to really do any in between. But the goal here is for kids to see, and I won't give away the whole punchline, although some of you might want to figure that out on your own, is that like, we're going to find 3 by 3s and we're going to find 4 by 4s. And there's probably a pattern to how many there are of each of those. Is that, Ms. Schmidt, do you want to add anything to that? I was just going to wrap it up with that.
Yeah, I was just going to say that this problem is such a great example of the kind of thinking that we're looking for, because a lot of them, once they start to see, oh, there's 2 by 2s and 3 by 3s, I mean, they'll just have like millions of copies of this with like things drawn, and they're just like trying to count, furiously count, and it just, then they lose count, and it can be a trying experience for them. But as they try to like organize their data and look for patterns and those kind of things, that really good mathematical thinking really gets accessed in this type of problem. So.
And that makes me think of like a good way that parents can help, even if you don't have the answer. Because, my kids did POWs like this in school, and it was actually a detriment when I already knew the answer, because it was hard to not give away the punchline, because it's just hard not to when you see it already. But a good way to help your child if they're struggling through this is to help them with organization. Like, ask them, okay, what have you done so far? Can you get this organized? Let's get it organized and look for patterns. So like, you don't have to know the answer or know what you're doing to help them with that, like that executive functioning piece of like how to get their work organized. It's helpful to have lots of copies of this sheet of paper. So kids like to highlight all the ones that they see. So it's helpful to have like one for the 2x2s and one for the 3x3s. So those are the kinds of things that I think parents can really support on these types of problems. This is also a problem where in that solution section, students could generalize it and say like, I know how to do this now for any size checkerboard, even if it's not an 8x8. So like I'm glad, Dorothy. How could you generalize this to any size? So this is a good one for that generalization thing. Okay, any questions about POWs in general? No, I'm seeing Miss Bryant shaking her head. Is there somewhere we can see our child's work? Yes, so they are working on the Blind Bats POW, and the Blind Bats POW is typed up on Google Classroom. So if you want to see your child's work at this point, I think what you have to do is go ask your child, hey, can I see your work on Google Classroom? Is there any other? I think that's the best way to do it. Of course, that depends on your child, letting you into their school world like that, but I think they'll be open to it. Text comes with a lot of worksheets. If you get stuck as a parent, I think the first step would be have your child come to office hours and ask a teacher for help. And then see if that, but if you as a parent, you're like, okay, I promise I'm not going to give them the answer, but can you, tell me which am I going the right direction? I think we're happy to give you some guidance that way. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Yeah. All right. I just wanted to share this because middle school, thank you, Wyatt. Yes, we can encourage, so questions about office hours. If you want to encourage your child to go to office hours, you can communicate with the teacher, and we actually have a system where we can put their name in and they get a little call slip that makes them come to office hours for us. So if that's something you want to set up, you can, but most kids are pretty good about coming when they need to come. I just had this conversation with my sixth graders this past week because it occurred to me that they're sixth graders and they of course have never had weighted grades before, and they have no idea what these grades mean. And they just got access to Aries and they're seeing their grades and they're like desperately trying to turn in late home thinking assignments because they think it's going to make this huge impact on their grade. And then they're disappointed that this 2-point home thinking assignment is not changing their grade from a B to an A. So I was just trying to give them the math behind how weighted grades work. So this is the image that I drew for them in class. And this is the sixth grade percentages. In sixth grade, tests and quizzes are worth 65% of their grade. And every unit, we have a checkup, we have a partner quiz, we have a second checkup, and then we have a unit test in some kind of order. And there's about 3 units per semester, maybe 3.5. So you get 3 checkups, 3 partner quizzes about, 3 checkup twos, and then 3 unit tests. And that all goes into the 65% bucket. And then the POWs and projects are 25%. And so far we've had the locker problem, which was a 50.1, the my favorite number, which is a 50.1. And then we're gonna have blind bats and checkerboards for 100 points each, because the locker problem we did together as a class, and then my favorite number was a little smaller. So, those are 300 points in that 25%. And then we have this tiny little home and class thinking bucket where there's tons of 2-point assignments. And that's in the 10% bucket. And what, yes, yeah. So thanks, Ms. Bryant, put in the chat. Yeah. When you're looking at their grades on Aries, it does have this breakdown of their grades by category. And what your students, when we look at the students' grades, I look at these 3 marks and it tells a story, right? If I have a student who's getting like high A on all their assessments, their POWs are a B, but they don't do any of their class and home thinking. I mean, to me, that means they're really understanding the concepts, but they're not really engaging in the independent practice, but they're understanding the concepts. Whereas the student down below, they have 100% in their class thinking, so they're turning everything in and they're very diligent student, but their understanding, because their assessments are down at 50%, their understanding is what's lacking. So if you're wondering how your child's doing, I do recommend looking at those 3 categories, because they do tell a pretty detailed story about what's going on. Ms. Schmidt, do you want to jump in? No.
Well, I was just going to say that, like, these are kind of the extreme examples, right? That usually the student who's getting a 98%, most of them are also the ones that are doing their home thinking. But yes, the point though is, like, if they're missing a home thinking or 2, I mean, we don't have the overall score for this, but that top student is probably still getting an A because their assessments are so high. So if you're looking at your student's grade and it's low and you're concerned, then the place to really focus is to look at their assessment grade. And one of the things that we do offer is anytime that the students take a test or a quiz, when they get it back, they have an opportunity to do test corrections, where we really want them to learn from their mistakes and eventually understand the concept, right? So we want them to take the time to really look at what happened, make sure they understand it, and they can fill out a test correction form where they redo the problem correctly, showing their work, and then they have to explain, like, the mathematical concept behind it. And then if they do that, they can turn that in and they get half of the points back on their assessment score. So something like that. I mean, if the thing you're looking at is like the percentage, the grade, that's not our highest motivation for doing that. We really want them to come to deeper understanding, but that will definitely, like, affect their grade also more than, making up a home thinking assignment from a few weeks ago. And we typically don't let them make up the home thinking assignments for points later, just because it's like we've moved on and it's too many things to go back and we want them to really focus on the present and understanding what is going on in class currently. So the test corrections is the place that we would point you towards.
And then Ms. Bryant just asked to explain the difference between Aries Gradebook and Google Classroom. Google Classroom is where we post assignments. Math is a little different from your other classes because our tests and quizzes are on paper. So tests and quizzes are not posted on Google Classroom. So it's not that not every assignment is posted on Google Classroom, but it's where we post the POW, and like I'll post an update or I'll post a picture of my notes from the day, and that's all on Google Classroom. Aries is the grade book where we put in our grades. There might be some grading on Google Classroom just for convenience, because, like, as we're reading a paper, we might put a score in just for our teacher convenience, but then we transfer it over to Aries. Becky/Patrick asked, where do I see that grade breakdown? I think there's a drop-down menu. I don't really know from the student or parent perspective, but there might be a drop-down arrow that says more that shows those 3 marks. You found it, Dorothy? Okay. All right. Just click on math. Okay, good. We're getting some good parent support in the chat. I forget where I was saying what I was saying though before. I was
sometimes for convenience we put a few grades on Google Classroom.
Yes, right.
But that's not where they,
yeah. So that is, so go to Aries to see the grades for sure. Oh, the other thing I was going to say is that I know that I post the Google, if there's assignment on Google Classroom, I make it due the night before it's due in class. So like if their home thinking is due Friday, I make it due on Google Classroom Thursday night, because I've gotten feedback from students that if I make it due Friday, it doesn't show up on their to-do list on Google Classroom until it's too late, because they want it to show up on their to-do list when they still have time to do it. So I make it due the day before. So the due dates might be one day off between Google Classroom and Aries, but that's just because kids have told me like, please make it due earlier so that it shows up. Okay, Matt has a question. I have to scroll up. Oh, what does learning in class look like? How much lecture, individual, group work? Okay. I feel like in my classroom, it's a lot of class conversation about things and then some practice problems. Okay, keep looking, Becky. I can help you with that maybe after. So we usually have like a slideshow guiding us, but there's some big questions that are almost always grappling with real world scenarios. And we have discussions about them. We do kind of an inquiry based of how we should solve it to get to like a more formal way of solving things. And then we do some practice. Ms. Schmidt, do you want to tackle that question as well? What does the class look like?
Yeah, it does really depend, you know. Sometimes it's I would say it definitely always kind of some inquiry, discussion, conversation. Sometimes there's a game in there and we're thinking about strategies and how to that kind of thing. Today we were looking at number lines and they were putting, coming up to the board and putting numbers on the number lines. And then we were doing a little bit of, okay, this is kind of the technical piece of it. And we did some practice. And so it is kind of a variety and depends on the day. They do sit in pairs in both of our classes. So they do a lot of pair work. Sometimes I put them in like groups of 3. But for most things, it's pairs, I would say, when they're working with others.
Yeah, and I think it does depend on the topic that we're in as well. Like in the first unit, it was very much a number theory unit, so we made a lot of conjectures about even and odd numbers, primes and composites, and kids were asked to like write down a claim that they think, and then we would share those out and check their validity and things like that. Yes, yeah. So sometimes, and then like what I was going to say is we have these big conversations, like theoretical conversations, but then we also know that sometimes kids need like to just practice the algorithm a little bit. So there'll be a little half sheet and we just kind of like make sure they actually know how to do it. Like we've had this big conversation about why it works the way it works, but then we also want to make sure they actually know how to do the steps. So we try to find a balance between those two things. Yeah, some days, especially in algebra, I feel like there are some days where it feels old school, where I'm like, I would like to make this inquiry based, but I think I just need to like walk you through and explain it. Oh, thank you, Becky slash Patrick. Found it to the very bottom of the page screen under all the individual assignments called totals. Yay, so that helps. So if you're looking for this breakdown, it's down at the bottom. Are there any other questions?
One little tiny detail. I was just going to say, when somebody was asking about the difference between Google Classroom and Aries, one thing to note is that on Google Classroom, students can mark things as done to get it off of their to-do list, and it may or may not actually be complete. And sometimes we want them, like, I would actually recommend that they mark as done kind of old assignments so they don't keep clogging up kind of their to-do list. But yeah, I mean, maybe after it's due, they could do that. But if it's something, yeah. So just because you see on Google Classroom that it says that it's done doesn't necessarily mean that it's actually been shown to us or turned in. So Aries is the place that the credit is actually given and all that.
Yeah, and then in addition to that, we both post our home thinking on Google Classroom, but then we ask them to do it in their notebook, and we walk around and check that they did it and ask if there are questions and things like that. So they don't actually have an assignment to turn in on Google Classroom for the home thinking. It's in their notebook. So once they've had it in their notebook, they can click turn it in, and that's fine. Oh, when the student is absent. So what I do is every day in class, I take pictures of my notes and I post them on Google Classroom. So if a student's absent, there's a little blurb about what we did that day with pictures of the notes. So that is the hope when they're absent. And I do recommend if kids are absent, they can come to office hours when they get back and say, like, is there anything I missed? Did I miss a quiz? You know. But I think looking through the notes that are on Google Classroom would be a good first step. And if they understand, or if everything they see there makes that sense, then they're usually pretty good to go. And we do kind of cycle back to things every day, you know.
And I do the same. So that if you go to Google Classroom and look in the stream, that's where those daily kind of updates are. They're not listed as like assignments. So they're not under classwork. They're under the stream. And
Am I showing it? I was going to show it. Yeah. I'll just show you my Google Classroom. So, and Ms. Schmidt and I, you know, we plan together. So every lesson we do is the same. So the sixth graders are all getting the same thing. So for example, here, you know, here are the notes from 11-2. You know, you can see all the pictures of, you know, what we talked about in class. You know, I can scroll through them. So if you were absent, they could scroll through this and be like, oh, opposite numbers, they're the same distance from 0. That makes sense. Okay, you know, so it's just, you can see what we did in class on these pictures here. So that's what I would recommend for absent students. Get out of there. I'm happy to answer any other questions. This is your time. We don't have anything else planned. Oh, I would say, while you guys are thinking, math is different from other core subjects in a few ways. One of the ways that we really feel in September and October is we start grading things for understanding almost immediately, whereas like in classes like Lit Comp or social science, they do a unit for a month before they have any sort of meaty writing assignment that they get to grade. So frequently, everybody's got nice high grades in every subject except math, where we immediately start grading for understanding. And so it feels like they're doing, you know, they're struggling more in math than other subjects, but it's just that we do hit the ground running. So we get grades in there right away. Oh, math support second semester. Okay, that's a great question. So we do have these classes called math lab classes. And they are the students' elective or not elected. But what we do is, you know, our class size is about 26. And so we take the 26 kids between Ms. Schmidt and I, between our sixth grade classes, we take the 26 kids that we think would benefit most from that help. And we've got, you know, we look at their state testing, if that's possible. We look at their test and quiz scores for us. We think about generally how they're doing as a math thinker. And we take 26 kids that we think that could use the most help. And instead of an elective, they take this math support class with Miss Gordon. And in that class, they do their home thinking together as a group to make sure they understand it. They get time to do their test corrections. things like that, little mini lessons and stuff like that. So we don't do it the whole year. We don't do it at the beginning because we don't know your students well enough to decide who needs it. And we want them to have a chance to take art. You know, a lot of students who struggle in math do struggle for the 3 years, and we want them to have an elective. So the 6th graders get it second semester, the 7th graders get math lab first semester of their 7th grade year, and then the second semester they take an elective. And then in 8th grade, we offer it year long for algebra. So did that answer your question, Erin? We really look at we start with the 26 lowest grades, students with the lowest grades. We start there. That's how we pick.
And it's a very effective class. Like a lot of students want to be in it because they feel really supported. I think they have a great like growth mindset about it. So it's not it's not, I don't know. It doesn't have some stigma attached. I'm always very proud and impressed with the students, and they really use it well. And Miss Gordon does a fabulous job, addressing all those issues and things, and they all love her. So, and there's also two really fabulous tutors in there. So there's 3 adults in there giving the support. So they get a lot more of the individual help in math lab as well.
Yeah, it is definitely a class that kids want to be in, and that kids that are not in it are jealous of, which is a great problem to have, because usually those classes come with like a stigma, and this is like, nah, you're so lucky, So yes, Erin, to answer your question, they would potentially, and we make it, because we're block schedule, we make it so the lab class is the opposite day of math, so they don't have it every day. So it'd be like
they do have it every day.
So they have math every day.
Yeah.
They don't have math twice in one day and none on the other day. So it's like they just see a math teacher every day. So, but yes, then they don't have an elective. So that is the trade-off. They don't have creative writing or psychology. Yes, Miss Bryant's son is in math lab and really loves it. Yes. So the big question is always, what if my child's bored? And I think I know that both of our classes have opportunities for kids to ask big questions. And, we like to teach with a very low floor and a high ceiling. So like there's a good entry point for everybody, but kids can take it as far as they want. Currently, I have students writing me letters so angry that 0.9 repeating equals 1. That was a random discussion that came up because a kid asked a good question. So if your child is saying like, it's easy, my response would be, what can you do? What can you ask? What can you wonder? That would take our conversation in a deeper, more thorough direction, because there's always more to talk about. And I know Ms. Schmidt and I love going off on tangents if they're meaningful tangents.
Yes, that's my class started with a student saying, Naomi told me that Ms. Noble said that 0.9 repeating equals 1. But that can't. And so we had the same conversation that Miss Noble had, and it was so fun. And then they got on all these things about like, can decimals be even and odd, and can negative numbers be? I mean, it was just like things that I hadn't really thought about, and seemingly simple things, thinking about even and odd numbers. But when they're curious about things and push our conversations deeper, they can be fascinated by all kinds of topics in math. So
yeah, I the things that we teach are things that number theory people study in number theory. So there is like college level thinking to be done about these things if the kids are pushing themselves. So that's my plug for that. Just really encourage that curiosity and wonder. For holding kids' attention for 2 hours, that is a thing to do. We do try to break it up with like a variety of activities. Like I talk for a while, they do something for a while, then we get a break and we do a rock, paper, scissors tournament in the middle of class, or, like we get up, and one class spontaneously did the limbo, like there was like music, they have their their breaks that they take kind of in the middle. But we do just try to vary the activity through the 2 hours because it is a long time. Yeah. And that is why, like, we give about a quiz or a test a week is kind of how it goes. But it's not the whole time, you know, like you can take a quiz and have a lesson, and that breaks that day up. So, yeah, that's a good question, Matt. Anybody have any other questions? If you're feeling inspired in the chat or out loud, you can, you know, give us a little reflection. And I used to think, now I think that's one of the thinking routines we use a lot. So if you have something you can fill in there, or what in our exploration or discussion is pushing your thinking beyond your first thought. If you have anything you want to put in the chat, you're welcome to. Or any more questions? Oh, now I'm going to open it up so I can see all your faces. Oh, hi, Matt. See you there. Aaron, you're welcome to come back and take my class. I don't know if Ryan wants you in his same block, but you're welcome to. Oh, thanks, Liz. It's so fun getting to know all your kids. I haven't taught 6th grade in a few years, and I really miss their enthusiasm. Thank you, Robin. Thanks for coming. Yeah. Oh, you're welcome, Abel. Oh, thanks, Becky / Patrick. I don't know which one I'm talking to. Thank you, both of you. Thanks, Marissa.
I really like the Becky Patrick comment. Can Ms. Schmidt, can you read that just so that we hear it too?
I used to think that math was so rigid, one answer only. I love hearing that there are opportunities for my child to dig deeper and ask questions in the moment and not be told we don't have time for your questions. It's one of the things that makes this school so special.
Becky, Patrick, who's your child? Oh, yeah. I am lucky enough to have Ollie in class. Ollie and Naomi always want to sit next to each other so they can talk math. Oh, thanks. And we're happy to have Dex in Math Club. We do have an after-school math club Mondays after school where we do really, really fun, challenging problems, and sometimes play games. Yeah, so it's nice to have Dex there too. Thanks, Dorothy.
There's lots to love, Dorothy. There's lots to love.
Wait, Dorothy. Oh, wait. Who's Dorothy's child? Oh, is Dorothy with?
Also Dexter's.
Also Dex. Okay, got it. Yeah. Yes, we encourage all your kids to come to Math Club. It's really, really fun. I know some of them got into robotics and can't do both. It's rough. But when robotics is over, they can come back to Math Club. Math Clubs is Mondays after school, and we have a good group, like maybe 15, 16 kids right now.
I've been recruiting. I got a few more too.
Yeah, we got some excited 6th graders. And, you know, that's another one of those, like, what do you do for the kid that's bored, which, you know, bored in math? Come to Math Club.
They will be challenged there for sure.
Yeah.
At what point do you give different POWs or more challenging POWs? Like, do you wait to figure out the students, or When is that an option?
I think I know there was a time in 7th grade where I gave a variety. I think in 6th grade, we just have the one at a time.
Mm-hmm.
I've always just given one, but they're usually quite challenging different for different students, but they're rarely easy.
Yeah.
I know also you guys have that math library in your class.
Oh, there's such good books in there, and very few people take advantage of it. That's the other thing I would recommend for kids that want a bit more. There's a great math library with all kinds of books about mathematicians and, the women from Hidden Figures, or there's one called the mathematical, about pi, or about the number 0, or the mathematical secrets of the Simpsons, which is one of my personal favorites. So on our side counters, we have a number of books that are mathy to read.
You can check them out from us.
Mm-hmm.
You know what we should do for the love of this still pandemic world? We should end like 2 minutes early and just send everyone out into their homes. We should just start waving and say good night. It's so good to have you here. And then just like, have a good time. We can't wait till next time we connect.
And 6th grade parents, make sure you sign up for conferences in a couple weeks.
Oh yeah.
Those are super fun and meaningful.
And if you want math, sign up quick, because those spots go fast.
Bye, guys. Have a good night. I hope to see you all soon.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Music.
The goodbye music.
I have to play this tomorrow right before the test starts.
Thank you guys so much. I'm glad that this is going to be recorded. You really hit on a lot of questions.
Yeah, lots of great questions.
Okay, 7:28, 2 minutes early. Have a good night. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.